The Senate will come to order. Senator Kerr, would you please lead us in the pledge? Let's see, I don't see Senator Kerr. Senator Crowder, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mr. Majors, would you please take the roll?
Aguilar. Balmer. Baumgartner. Brophy. Cadman. Crowder. Grantham. Guzman. Harvey. Heath. Herpin. Hill. Hodge. John. Johnston. Jones. Kafalis. Kerr. King. Lambert. Lundberg. Marble. Newell. Nicholson. Renfro. Rivera. Roberts. Scheffel. Schwartz. Stedman. Talktrop. Todd. Uleberry. Zenzinger. Madam President.
Here. With 35 present, 0 absent, 0 excused, the Senate has a quorum. Motion to adopt the journal. Senator Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, I move that the journal for April 22nd be dispensed with, the reading of the journal from April 22nd be dispensed with, and the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary. Thank you.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Motion is adopted. Senate Services.
April 23rd, 2014, correctly printed. Senate Bills 209, 210, 211, 212, correctly engrossed. Senate Bills 182, 184, 185, and 186. Senate Joint Resolution 10, correctly re-engrossed. Senate Bills 12, 14, and 162, correctly revised. House Bills 1061, 1204, 1260, 1280, 1288, 1314, 1354, and House Joint Resolution 1014, correctly re-revised. House Bill 1313, correctly enrolled. Senate Bills 156 and 160.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning. I move that we proceed out of order for the purpose of considering Senate Joint Memorial 4.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. We will proceed out of order to take up Senate Joint Memorial 4. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Joint Memorial 4?
Senate Joint Memorial 4 by Senator Balmer and Representative Holbert concerning memorializing former Senator Frank Kemp.
Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move Joint Memorial 4 and ask that it be read at length.
Thank you, Mr. Majors. Would you please read Senate Joint Memorial 4 at length?
Whereas our respected former colleague Frank Kemp, a past member of the Colorado General Assembly, departed this life on April 8, 2013 at the age of 91. And whereas Senator Kemp was born in Denver, Colorado on May 10, 1921. And whereas in 1942, Senator Kemp graduated from Yale University where he played varsity football and rugby. And whereas Senator Kemp served in the United States Marine Corps during World War II and was awarded 2 Bronze Stars, a Silver Star, a Soldier's Medal, a Gold Star, and 2 Purple Hearts for numerous acts of bravery and selflessness. And whereas after sustaining a serious shrapnel injury in Okinawa, Japan in 1945, Senator Kemp returned to the United States and underwent months of rigorous rehabilitation before joining the football coaching staff at the U.S. Naval Academy. And whereas Senator Kemp returned to Denver in 1947 to work for the Great Western Sugar Company and later co-founded the successful land and livestock company Etcheper and Kemp. And whereas in 1951, Senator Kemp married Polly Wilson, and in later years they became the proud parents of Frank and Hovey and the proud grandparents of Matthew and Wilson. And whereas Senator Kemp was elected to the Colorado House of Representatives in 1952 and served 3 terms. And whereas Senator Kemp was elected to the Colorado Senate in 1967 and served 1 term. And whereas, among other appointments, Senator Kemp served on the Agriculture and Livestock Committee, as Vice Chair of the Finance Committee, and as Chair of the Business Affairs and Labor Committee. And whereas Senator Kemp was instrumental in the legislation that allowed for the founding of Metropolitan State University of Denver, and whereas Senator Kemp was a dedicated community leader and served on many local boards, including the Colorado Cattle Feeders Association, the Colorado State Historical Society, and St. Joseph's Hospital. And whereas Senator Kemp was known for his integrity, generosity of spirit, and commitment to service. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that in the death of Frank Kemp, the people of the state of Colorado have lost a dedicated public servant and an outstanding citizen, and that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, extend our deep and heartfelt sympathy to the members of his family and pay tribute to a man who served his state well and faithfully. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint memorial be sent to Senator Kemp's wife, Polly Kemp, his sons Frank Kemp and Hovey Kemp, and his grandsons Matthew Kemp and Wilson Kemp.
Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Madam President. It is my honor to bring Joint Memorial 4 to tell you a little bit about the life of Senator Frank Kemp. I did not know Senator Kemp. I was asked to run this memorial because Senator Kemp was a Republican from Denver. And he chaired a committee, and you know the reason he chaired a committee was because the Republicans controlled the Senate when he served in the Senate. So he lived during wonderful, wonderful time in Colorado history. Let me tell you about this guy. This guy was an amazing guy. He got 2 Bronze Stars, a Silver Star, a Gold Star, and 2 Purple Hearts. And he was severely injured and came back and went through a lot of rehab and eventually was able to carry on and was at the coaching staff of the Naval Academy. He served for 3 terms in the House, 1 term in the Senate. His most momentous bill, or the bill that he's most remembered for, was the bill to create Metro State University in Denver. And his family is not here. His family lives out of state in Washington, D.C. area and also in New York State. We wanted to remember Senator Kemp, and we're going to be sending this to his family after it passes the Senate and the House. We do not need to do a roll call. We discussed that, but since the family is not here, we were just going to pass it normally. But I appreciate you taking a moment to listen to his life. He obviously led an extraordinary life, and Colorado was made a much better state because of his leadership.
Senator Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam President, and as a friend of the Kemp family, I just would like to extend my condolences to them and acknowledge the leadership of their father.
Any further discussion on Senate Joint Memorial 4? Members, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Memorial 4. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Joint Memorial 4 is adopted. Senator Balmer.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that this morning's roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Any objection? Seeing none, this morning's roll call will be added as co-sponsors to Senate Joint Memorial 4. Committee reports.
April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1178 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1001 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following Senate Bill 155 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1159 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1101 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1180 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1278 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1227 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1269 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Finance, after consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following House Bill 1119 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations.
Third reading of bills. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 186?
Senate Bill 186 by Senator Schwartz and Kerr and Representative Tyler concerning the aggregation of efficiency projects in small communities in order to attract private sector investment through performance contracting.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Madam President. We move Senate Bill 186 on third reading and final passage. We ask for your aye vote.
Any discussion? Question is the adoption of Senate Bill 186. Are there any no votes? Senators Baumgartner, Lambert, Harvey, Marble, Brophy, Lundberg, Shuffle, Balmer, Grantham, Renfro. Mr. Minority Leader. Senator Hill. With 23 ayes, 12 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 186 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senators Nicholson, Aguilar, Mr. Majority Leader, Senator Todd, Senator Jones. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 184?
Senate Bill 184 by Senator Schwartz and Representative Quorum concerning oversight of the industrial hemp program.
Senator Schwartz. Senator Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam President. I move Senate Bill 184 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Question is the adoption of Senate Bill 184. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 184 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Excuse me. Senators, lots of you. Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Harvey, Lambert, Herpin, Baumgartner, Madam President Pro Tem, Senators Marble, King, Balmer, Lundberg, Renfro, Zenzinger, Aguilar, Nicholson, Kafalas, Stedman, Newell, John, Talktrap, Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Jones, Hodge, Todd, Crowder. Please add the President. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 185?
Senate Bill 185 by Senators Johnston and Zenzinger and Representative Pedersen concerning pay for success contracts for successful early childhood education services programs.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Madam President. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 185 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Question is the adoption of Senate Bill 185. Are there any no votes? Senators Crowder, Renfro, Baumgartner, Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Scheffel, Grantham, Harvey, Brophy, Herpin, Lundberg, Marble, King, Rivera, Lambert, Roberts, Balmer, Hill. With 18 ayes, 17 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 185 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Senator Kefauver, Senators Nicholson, Madam President Pro Tem, Senator Kerr, Senators Todd, Aguilar, Noel, Ulibarri. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 182?
Senate Bill 182 by Senator Hodge and Representative Pennison concerning procedures governing discussions by boards of education of school districts while meeting in executive session.
Senator Hodge.
Thank you, Madam President. I move Senate Bill 182 and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Madam President. I come down to speak briefly. I didn't engage in the debate on seconds at all, but I deeply disagree with this bill. I believe the bill will do little more than simply harass school district boards. If it's really a good idea that there be this higher standard of reporting on executive sessions, then it should be across the table for all boards within the state rather than simply school boards. And I come down to speak because what I have observed is a few school boards are actually taking independent action and a course different than the prescribed path that all school boards are expected to take, and one of which is the school board in my district. And I attended one of their meetings this spring and discovered that the acrimony that that those who disagree with the policies are putting forth in their public meetings is forcing a great deal of their discussion to find some other path. And I believe that this bill is simply is going to harass school boards. I don't see that it's good public policy. As I say, if it's good public policy, then it would not just target school boards. It would deal with the executive sessions of all boards and commissions in Colorado. I'm a no vote.
Question before the body is the adoption of Senate Bill 182. Are there any no votes? Senators Scheffel, Rivera, Mr. Minority Leader, Senator Crowder, Renfro, Baumgartner, Harvey, Lambert, Brophy, Hill, Herpin, Lundberg, Marble, Grantham, King, Roberts, Balmer. Senator Balmer, I've got you. With 18 ayes, 17 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Bill 182 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Ulibarri. Senator Kefauver. Please add the President. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1260?
House Bill 1260 by Representative Foote, Senator Johnston, concerning the creation of 3 mandatory minimum presumptive ranges for defendants convicted of a felony sex offense involving intrusion against a child who is under 12 years of age when the adult defendant is at least 10 years older. That has one of the ranges starting at 10 years as the minimum in the range, and in connection therewith creating an indeterminate lifetime sentence with a mandatory minimum presumptive range of 10 to 16 years for a Class 4 felony, a mandatory minimum presumptive range of 18 to 32 years for a Class 3 felony, and a mandatory minimum presumptive range of 24 to 48 years for a Class 2 felony.
Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Madam President. I move House Bill 1260 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to take a brief minute of your time this morning, colleagues. Sometimes in this building you see remarkable things and you hear remarkable things, and the testimony on this bill was maybe one of the most remarkable things I've seen in this building. And the folks in the Judiciary Committee probably remember. There was a young man named Matthew, 16 years old, right at the age where most people are embarrassed to testify in front of a committee at all or to be seen with their parents, let alone to come down to the state capitol and tell this story, which is that Matthew, when he was 5, was raped repeatedly by a neighbor, ages 5, 6, and 7, same age as my 2 boys are right now. And this was a handsome, good-looking kid, 16, smart, got it together, plays sports, and he went and started to tell the story of the last 10 years of his life. And he talked about how after he reported the rape, he started treatment, how he's been in treatment for 10 years since then, how he went through several years in elementary and middle school where he couldn't actually go to school because the anxiety was too great to even be around other people. He talked about how he finally took refuge in sports and started to play sports, and that was his thing that he thought would bring him back. Started playing football, was quite good at it. And then freshman year in high school had a situation where he got tackled and was under a pile of kids and couldn't get out. And it suddenly triggered the same anxiety he had when he was 6 and was under this grown man that he couldn't get out from under. And he had a break that he could never go back to playing football again. So now here's this kid, 16 years old, broken, trying to find his way out of 10 years of trauma that he suffered when he was 5 or 6. A mom, a family, cousins who've spent their entire lives trying to take a perfectly healthy, happy 6-year-old boy and find a way to put all of those pieces back together again. And the worst part of the story is that the man that did that to Matthew got probation. He never spent a day in jail. His family will spend the rest of their lives trying to put Matthew back together. And the man who broke his life and the rest of their lives will never spend a day in prison. Proud to bring Colorado's version of Jessica's Law today. There have been members of this chamber who have been working on this for a long, long time. I know Senator Penry worked on this for a long time while he was here. I think that one of the small promises we can make is that we can't prevent folks from Matthew from enduring the trauma they've been through. But we can certainly promise them that we won't turn our eyes in the other direction on making sure that they get justice. So I'd ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1260.
Question is the adoption of House Bill 1260. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1260 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Nicholson, Kafalas, Zenzinger, Kerr, Toktrop, Newell, King, Ulibarri, Jones, Schwartz, Todd, Hodge, Rivera, Crowder, Roberts, Baumgartner, Lambert, Herpin, please add the president. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1061?
House Bill 1061 by Representative Salazar and Senator Guzman concerning sentences imposing monetary payments and criminal actions and in connection therewith eliminating prison sentences for persons who are unable to pay criminally monetary penalties.
Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Madam President. I move House Bill 1061 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Question is the adoption of House Bill 1061. Are there any no votes? With Senator Rivera, are you a no? We haven't taken the final vote yet, so we'll go back to a discussion phase. Senator Rivera, did you want to speak on House Bill 1061? Senator Rivera.
Thank you, Madam President. This particular bill concerns me because of the unintended consequences that we could have in the judicial system and how things go with folks. Call me old school, I don't know, call me from law enforcement, but it just seems that ultimately if a fine, which has long been used as part of on the right bill, right? That long seems to be part of a deterrent effect, not just prison or jail terms or so on and so forth. That is in fact a deterrent. And the folks that have to pay these fines, it's not just because of a debt, or like you would a credit card or something, but this is actual because of a violation of a law. And that's why they were issued a fine. And so I'm very concerned that we would end up with the unintended consequence of folks basically being scofflaws who see no reason to pay fines if there's actually, in the long run, a very good chance that they won't have to be held accountable. And in fact, just yesterday we were in transportation and we heard a testimony concerning a handicap parking enforcement bill that was being put out there and that we okayed and so on. And one of the things that the proponents were discussing was the fines that keep people from using those spaces inappropriately, and they see that as a deterrent for people to not use those spaces. But again, knowing human nature and having been in law enforcement, I believe that folks that realize that in the long run there's no teeth in the bill, especially on a monetary side of it, that it's like, wow, there's no reason for me not to park here because I'll get a ticket, but ultimately there's a good chance they may not ever have to pay this fine and be held accountable. So I'm very concerned about that particular part of it, the unintended consequence of this particular bill, and I'll be a no vote.
Senator Guzman.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me clarify something. These fees and fines are court fees and fines. These are not fines placed upon people for committing the crime of, as an instance of parking in a disability parking space. That is not a court fee or fine. That is different. Those folks who have been given a fine are expected to pay a court fee are not necessarily going to go free. The judge has the right to decide how to make sure this fee is paid. It is stated in the United States Constitution and the Colorado Constitution that it is unconstitutional to place someone in a jail facility simply because they are indigent and cannot pay a court fee. These are fees that for a broken tail light or whatever those kinds of things might be. It is unconstitutional. This law, when we pass this bill, will place Colorado's judicial system in the realm of supporting and aligning itself with the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Colorado. I ask for an aye vote.
Question is the adoption of House Bill 1061. Are there any no votes? Senator Rivera. With 34 ayes, 1 no, 0 absent, and 0 excused, House Bill 1061 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Crowder, Jones, Kafalas, Nicholson, Aguilar, Toktrop, Ulibarri, Johnston, Zenzinger, Newell, Hodge, Todd, King, Stedman. Please add the President. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1280?
House Bill 1280 by Representative Dorr and Senator Schwartz concerning limits on liability for agritourism.
Senator Schwartz.
And thank you, Madam President. I move House Bill 1280 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Senator Crowder.
I rise in support of this bill, and I'm grateful for it. I run some pretty rough bulls, and if this passes, I want to thank you for lessening the liability on the bulls that I have. I think it's a great idea, and I'm all for it. Thank you.
Senator Schwartz.
Thank you. And I think the biogas bill will also help you out too over there.
Wrong bill. Question is the adoption of House Bill 1280 on third reading. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1280 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Yes. Senator Crowder and Senators Aguilar, Madam President Pro Tem, Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Roberts, Herpin, Brophy, Rivera, Newell, Hodge, Todd, Grantham, Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1354?
House Bill 1354 by Representatives Buckner, Gardner, and Senators Aguilar and Crowder concerning the ability of a county clerk and recorder to seek judicial review of final action by the Secretary of State relating to elections.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Madam President. I move 1354 on third reading and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Question is the adoption of House Bill 1354. Any no votes? Senators Baumgartner, Harvey, Balmer. With 32 ayes, 3 noes, 0 out. Back to the question of no votes on House Bills 1354. Presently, I have Senators Balmer, Baumgartner, and Harvey. Are there other no votes? Senator Shuffle. With 31 ayes, 4 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1354 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Herpin. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1288?
House Bill 1288 by Representative Pabon, Senator Aguilar concerning information available regarding personal belief exemptions to immunization requirements for children prior to attending school.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1288 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Senator Hill.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I ask us to reconsider this. We've moved this forward. I expect it's going to pass today, but I'm concerned that we're setting a dangerous precedent here. This idea that somehow we know what's best, that somehow we in this room can decide what parents should and shouldn't be doing, and they have to ask permission from us in order to do what they feel so strongly about. When it comes to something as personal as immunizations, as something as unscientifically proven, I think it's time we actually encourage debate on the matter. It's time we actually encourage this to challenge the status quo as we're seeing science and evidence come out that perhaps these immunizations that we've pursued for so long are not actually serving the best interests of our kids, the best interest of our public health. It's time that we give parents, responsible parents, parents who are spending hours upon hours upon hours researching these issues, desiring to do what's best for their kids. It's time to give them that freedom, to protect that freedom and to encourage the result that comes from it rather than trying to stifle it, saying somehow this is a threat to public health. We need to have debate about what the next century of public health looks like, not trying to hold us back to what we've developed in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, and somehow assuming that the science is settled. When science continues to evolve, it continues to be updated. What we've seen in antibiotics is proof that what we did decades ago is not good enough for what we need to be what we need to do today. As we see that viruses and we see bacteria continue to evolve and be more of a threat and be more dangerous, we need to have a more dynamic, a more robust system, not just for immunizations, but for parents making these decisions. And unfortunately, we have a bill here that takes away some of that opportunity for the parents. It says, no, here's another hurdle Not just do you have to research it, not just do you have to deeply want and desire and do what's best for your kids, but now you have to have government's permission to do so. I'm concerned we're moving in the wrong direction, not just from a public policy standpoint, but from a health standpoint and from a freedom standpoint. And I encourage you to reconsider your support of this bill and vote no.
Senator Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam President, and I rise in support of the bill. And this doesn't take any parental rights away. Some of you are aware that when I was 6 weeks old, my father contracted polio and was a quadriplegic his entire life. And that is a completely preventable disease today. Many of us are Rotarians. We go around this world preventing polio with a very simple vaccine. I think that we cannot put people or society at risk when we know that medicine can prevent tragedies like a polio epidemic that crippled so many.
Senator Taktrap.
Thank you, Madam President, and I too rise in support of this bill. I had polio. I was one of the last of the big epidemic that came through the United States back in the early 50s, and I can remember that was right before the Salk vaccine. And my mother was extremely cautious with us, but as soon as I started kindergarten, there was about 4 of us in our class that developed polio, and I spent 6 weeks in the hospital. I think that's why I became a nurse, because of my experience with polio. But I can remember then, because of the research that was done and because of the Salk vaccine, that disease was eradicated here in this country, essentially. And the concern is that if we do not make sure that we provide the vaccinations for our children, this disease will come back. And when you go to third world countries, which I have been in, and you see a lot of people walking around, and you can look at them and you can see this person had polio, this person had that. Smallpox has been eradicated. Smallpox was a very, very contagious disease, and it was one of the oldest vaccines that was developed and given to people. And the concern is now, many people don't get vaccine immunizations anymore, but the concern is that it may come back. And in some of the third world countries, that is a concern. The other thing they talk about, whooping cough. We all been immunized with whooping cough when we were younger, but that is all worn off. And I will tell you, as an adult, if you get whooping cough, it's a deadly disease and you may die from it. And I think it's a concern that you want to make sure. This is a public health issue. We have done other things in the public health arena to address concerns for the betterment of all the people in this state and in this area, and I'm very much a strong supporter of this bill. I do wish it was stronger, but I want to thank Senator Aguilar for working as hard as she did, at least to bring it this far. Thank you.
Senator Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam President. I also rise in support. As a former public health nurse, I am in strong support of immunizing children against vaccine-preventable diseases. This bill actually does not require parents to immunize their children, but it does inform the parents of the school rates for the immunization levels of the children in that particular school. There are several children who cannot be immunized because of medical reasons, and for that reason it's extremely helpful to their parents to know where their child is most likely to be protected by the other children in the school, and for that reason I think this makes excellent public sense.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be voting no on the bill, but I do want to thank the sponsor for a couple of elements. One is it was amended in committee to take the most onerous part out of it for now. I appreciate the sponsor's commitment to stick with that policy through the conference committee if the House doesn't accept the Senate version as is. I also appreciate the amendment that was accepted on second reading that simply stated that parents need to know, and they need to understand the benefits and the risks of vaccinations. I also stand here in opposition to the bill, but I don't want to give the impression that there isn't a place for vaccinations, for immunizations. Fully acknowledge that the incredible good that it has provided for really the entire human race in some ways. But we've got to deal with the facts. And the concern I've followed this issue pretty carefully for the last quarter century. As I said in seconds, ever since my son had a severe reaction, not severe enough to be debilitating, but close enough that we knew that was it for the pertussis for us. We weren't going to risk him on a second round. And I know too many other people who have seen permanent damage done. What concerns me is the information that I see from health officials is not complete. It's not the full picture. When I read the glossy brochures that are prepared for parents, it gives you half the story. And I want to see good science applied, and I want to see parents trusted with all of the information. The way this bill was when it came over from the House, it set it up where you either went through a long indoctrination program online with the Department of Health, or you sat down with your doctor for them to go through the same thing. And just think through this scenario. Parents would be forced to, and I recognize that's not in the bill today, but I do say this because it's still on the table. That's the House version. And the statement was, well, you just need to get your doctor to tell you the rest of the facts. Well, think about it. If this doctor is deeply committed to every child receiving every vaccination, and that's what I've observed far too many times, rather than a recognition that you've got to weigh the pluses and the minuses, then you sit down with your doctor and they give you this, and then if you decide to not take the doctor's advice, are you going against medical advice? You know, is this essentially AMA? I don't see the answer to that, but I do have a deep concern that the requirement for that hoop would be a deeply troubling. Hence, I'm very grateful for the sponsors' commitment to not go down that road if there's a conference committee. I'll go back to the main point, though. I want to see good facts and complete information given. I believe that parents should be trusted with all of the information, and I haven't seen that. I've been down here in Youth, Health, and Human Services type committees for a dozen years now. I've sat through many, many hearings on this, and what I hear is half of the truth, not all of the truth. When I see public health officials sit down and get honest with all the facts, then I'll be much more supportive of measures of disclosure. And maybe that's what needs to happen with this, is there needs to be more disclosure to all parents of all factors, regardless of what they choose. But I don't see that either. I don't see that done for any parent who says, sure, immunize them, then there's no discussion really required. Maybe a really complicated form that nobody is going to be reading through. But 1288 is not headed the right way, and you don't have to go any further than the legislative declaration to understand that it's really a one-sided argument that's being put forth here. So again, I appreciate some of the efforts that have been made, but I'll still be a no vote on the bill overall. Thank you.
Senator Aguilar.
Thank you, colleagues, and thank you for your continued discussion, and thank you for restating what I would have liked to state, which is that, again, we did eliminate the portion of the bill that requires parental education, and I did commit to you here at that microphone that I will not put that back in conference committee. And Senator Lundberg, I know you would catch that in a second anyway. Why would I even try? And I also finally want to thank Senator Lundberg for acknowledging that there have been a lot of great scientific advances made and lives saved through the efforts of vaccines, and I look forward to continuing discussion on this. And with that, I move for the adoption of House Bill 1288.
Question before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1288. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Shuffle, Crowder, Baumgartner, Harvey, Lambert, Brophy, Herpin, Lundberg, Marble, Grantham, Renfro, Rivera, King, Balmer, Hill. With 20 ayes, 19 ayes, 16 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1288 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Senators Ulibarri, Toctrop, Nicholson. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1314?
House Bill 1314 by Representative Pedersen and Senator Kerr concerning cooperation between school districts and charter schools on ballot questions to authorize additional local revenues.
Senator Kerr.
Thank you, Madam President. I move House Bill 1314 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion? Question is the adoption of House Bill 1314. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1314 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Rivera, Herpin, Kafalas, Shuffle. Co-sponsors on 1314, Senator Balmer. Senator Rivera, I've got you as a co-sponsor. Senator Todd, Senator Crowder, Senators King, Roberts, Zenzinger, Lambert, Brophy, Newell, Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Bill 1204?
House Bill 1204 by Representative Wilson and Senator Grantham concerning flexibility regarding the requirements imposed on rural school districts.
Senator Grantham.
Thank you, Madam President. I move House Bill 1204 on third reading and final passage and ask for use of the current roll call.
Any discussion? Question is the adoption of House Bill 1204. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Bill 1204 is adopted. Co-sponsors, Senators Todd, Schwartz, Newell, Kafalas, Hodge, John, Kerr, Aguilar, Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Toctrop, Johnston, Madam President Pro Tem, Senators Nicholson, Shuffle, Crowder, Brophy, Herpin, Roberts, King, Rivera, Renfro, Baumgartner, Zenzinger, Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we lay over all of the bills on general order, second reading of bills until tomorrow, April 24th.
For the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. We'll lay over general order, second reading of bills until tomorrow. Committee reports.
April 23rd, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1328 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. April 23rd, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 188 be amended as follows and as so amended for the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. April 23rd, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1331 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. April 23rd, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1329 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. April 23rd, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1327 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. April 23rd, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Mayor's Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1316 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. April 23, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Marriage Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1273 be referred to Committee of the Whole. Favorable recommendation. April 23, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Marriage Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1213 be referred to the Committee of the Whole. Favorable recommendation. April 23, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Marriage Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1199 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee of the Whole. Favorable recommendation, with the recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. April 23, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Marriage Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1162 be referred to the Committee of the Whole. Favorable recommendation, with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar. April 23, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Marriage Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1144 be referred to Committee of the Whole. Favorable recommendation, with the recommendation to be placed on the consent calendar. April 23, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Marriage Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1011 be referred to Committee of the Whole. Favorable recommendation. April 23, 2014, Committee on Appropriations. After consideration, the Marriage Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 159 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee of the Whole. Favorable recommendation. April 22, 2014, Committee on Local Government. After consideration, the Marriage Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1307 be referred to Committee of the Whole. Favorable recommendation. April 22, 2014, Committee on Local Government. After consideration, the Marriage Committee recommends the following: House Bill 1009 be referred favorably to Committee on Appropriations. April 22, 2014, Committee on Local Government. After consideration, the Marriage Committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 195 be amended as follows and as so amended before the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation.
Consideration of resolutions. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that House Joint Resolution 1009 be laid over until tomorrow, April 24th.
For the motion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. House Joint Resolution 1009 will lay over until tomorrow. Mr. Majors, would you please read the title to House Joint Resolution 1012?
House Joint Resolution 1012 by Representatives Melton and Moreno and Senators Ulibarri and Zenzinger concerning a federal minimum wage increase and in connection therewith urging the United States Congress to act.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Madam President. I move House Joint Resolution 1012 and ask that it be read at length.
Mr. Majors, would you please read House Joint Resolution 1012 at length?
Whereas the federal minimum wage was established through the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 in response to the Great Depression to ensure that workers earned enough to pay for necessities and minimum monthly expenses. And whereas since then the cost of living has steadily increased while the federal minimum wage has generally remained stagnant, and whereas Congress has only raised the minimum wage twice in the past 20 years, and whereas the federal minimum wage, adjusted for inflation, has declined from its peak of $10.72 in 1968 to $7.25 today, a 33% decrease in purchasing power. And whereas under the current minimum wage, it is possible to work full-time and still be under the minimum federal poverty line. And whereas it is virtually impossible for a minimum wage worker to afford a two-bedroom apartment in any state while working a 40-hour week. And whereas raising the federal minimum wage would decrease American dependency on public assistance programs such as Section 8 housing vouchers and food stamps in order to pay for living expenses and raising families. And whereas the majority of those who would benefit from a minimum wage increase are full-time workers who are supporting their families in moderate to low-income households. And whereas for the vast majority of low-skilled or unskilled workers, the minimum wage should be simply a starting salary that gets them employed and gives them a chance to advance. And whereas increasing the minimum wage would immediately boost the wages of about 15 million low-income workers. And whereas raising the federal minimum wage is projected to significantly boost the economy at large by increasing purchasing power of workers, thereby increasing the United States gross domestic product. And whereas in 2006, Colorado voters decisively voted to approve Initiative 42, which raised the state minimum wage and tied it to inflation in order to preserve the purchasing power of Colorado workers and help ensure that they can support themselves and their families. And whereas Colorado raised the minimum wage in 2011 and 2012 over the federal minimum, which contributed to a decrease in the unemployment rate from 8.73% to 7.2% during that 2-year period. And whereas several other states have notably raised their minimum wages during times of high unemployment, including Washington, Oregon, Ohio, and Arizona, and those states all experienced decreases of at least 1.5% in unemployment during the same 2-year period. And whereas raising the minimum wage would not only stimulate the economy, but will also lift millions of Americans out of poverty. Now therefore be resolved by the House of Representatives of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the Colorado General Assembly, urge and request members of Congress to increase the federal minimum wage and thereafter tie it to inflation to help ensure that hardworking Americans can earn a fair wage and afford to care for their families. Be it further resolved that a copy of this joint resolution be transmitted to the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the President Pro Tem of the United States Senate, the majority and minority leaders of the United States House of Representatives and Senate, and the majority and minority whips of the United States House of Representatives and Senate.
Senator Zunzinger.
Thank you, Madam President. Since the federal minimum wage was established in 1938, the cost of living has steadily increased while the minimum wage has generally remained stagnant. In real terms, adjusted for inflation, the purchasing power of the federal minimum wage has declined 33% from its peak in 1968 to $10.72. Under the current minimum wage, you can be a full-time worker, 40 hours a week, and still be under the federal poverty line. And the majority of people who would benefit from this increase are full-time workers who are supporting their families in moderate to low-income households. Raising the federal minimum wage will also boost the economy. With a higher minimum wage, workers will have more purchasing power. Research from the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago shows that a $1 minimum wage hike increases household income by $250 and the spending power of about $700 per quarter in the year following that increase. Raising wages for low-income workers would cut government spending and save taxpayers money by reducing dependence on social programs. In Colorado, 269,000 workers would be affected by this. 141,000 workers indirectly, and 217,000 children in Colorado. I encourage an aye vote.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you for your consideration of House Joint Resolution 1012. I stood before you just a few weeks ago and asked many of you to join me in a minimum wage challenge, which was an effort to understand and empathize with the challenges working families in Colorado face by working hard every single day, working full-time work and earning $8 an hour. Some of you joined me in that challenge, and I want to stand here and thank you for taking on that opportunity to understand and empathize, realize the challenges that people in our communities, in our districts face every day. If you don't know, in the state of Colorado, the minimum wage is $8 an hour, and the reason it's higher than the $7.25 an hour at the federal level is because Colorado voters decisively acted in 2006 to increase our state minimum wage and index it to inflation and put it in our state constitution. I'm proud to say that in 2006, as a recent college graduate, I worked as a petition circulator to qualify that for the ballot to ensure that working families could get a raise. But it's still not enough. It is wholly and fully deficient for working families to earn $8 an hour working full-time. The challenge, as I outlined it to you, was to use $49 for your weekly food expenses, $52 for miscellaneous expenses, and all of your other earnings to go to housing costs. That would have meant just over $800 a month in rent without paying for utilities like heat or water or telephone service. $49 for food and $52 for transportation or miscellaneous expenses. I want to tell you a little bit about my experience and share a little of my history on this issue. So for me, the grocery shopping wasn't too difficult because from my own personal perspective, from my own lived experience, my family has survived on minimum wage before. I'm accustomed to eating dry beans and rice. I'm used to using Tapatio as the flavor enhancer on every single meal because that's how my family has survived. But $49 for the week, just for me, meant that I had fresh fruits and vegetables that lasted me only 5 days. It meant that I was not meeting my caloric intake for the week because, in all honesty, I chose to eat real food rather than the highly processed foods that are incredibly inexpensive. I could have eaten ramen all week long, but then it starts to highlight the challenges that many low-income people face. The challenge of eating enough or eating too much because of cost. I spent $48 and I think 97 cents. I went all the way down to the wire buying real food, and by the end of the week I was hungry. I was lethargic because I did not get enough to eat. Same time, I filled up my tank of gas and was able to make it here to the Capitol every single day, although I had to carpool a few times. It left me $15 for other miscellaneous expenses. By the third day of the challenge, I had to take my daughter to preschool, and it was the beginning of April, so I had to make a payment for her preschool costs, which would have been my entire food budget for the month if I had been a minimum wage worker. We also had a car issue where we had an oil leak that same week, serendipitously, and if I had to pay out of pocket as a minimum wage worker, there would have been no way for me to fix my transit, which would have meant I would have been unable to attend work, which would have meant I would have been out of a job and my family would have been without food or shelter or heat. For me, for that week, it was an exercise to go through and document the challenges I face as someone who does not earn minimum wage. Actually, we as senators earn more than the minimum wage. Our salary is double what a minimum wage worker earns, and technically we only work 120 days out of the year. For so many Coloradans, they don't get to opt out at the end of the week. There is no other option for them. They can work another job, they can work another two, and they can still struggle to make ends meet. If you worked 2 full-time minimum wage jobs, it is still highly unlikely that you could afford rent in the metro area. We're talking about $8 an hour, 40 hours a week. Or we're talking $8 an hour, 80 hours a week with 2 kids. It doesn't support the people here in Colorado. I had the poetic close of my minimum wage week challenge, where it was the snowstorm. You may remember I was with my family and our power was knocked out because of the heavy snow. And it was the last day of the challenge. And I was laying there in a dark, cold house, realizing that based on the rules of the challenge, the rules of the game, I hadn't paid heat for the entire week, and there would have been no way for me to do so. And I think of the kids in my district, those who live in trailer parks in Federal Heights like the one I grew up in, or the kids who live in the barracks that are made out of tin in Commerce City that have no insulation. And I think of their parents working every day very hard to make ends meet, and their inability to provide the bare necessities. I extended a hand to all of my colleagues when I accepted the minimum wage challenge, and I want to extend a hand to all of you as well. I say this often about my district, and I love my district with all my heart, but we are faced with immense poverty in my area. 9 out of 10 kids in the Adams 14 school district live at or below the federal poverty line. 9 out of 10 kids in the Adams 50 school district live at or below the federal poverty line. Those are the 2 largest school districts in my area. Take a walk with me. Come see some of the barracks, literally barracks, in Commerce City near the rail line, where folks use newspaper as insulation. And look at the eyes of the workers who are doing everything in their power to move ahead. And tell me that we can't do something, that the federal government cannot act, that we as the people of Colorado cannot act. There is a moral imperative here. Once upon a time, minimum wage jobs could actually move you forward. Right now, the vast majority of folks who are earning minimum wage are adults. The average age of a minimum wage worker is 35. You might be thinking of Mad Men or the 1950s, where those who worked in the soda shops or did the ice cream scoops were the only ones earning minimum wage. But as we've gone from an agrarian society to a service-based society, more and more adults are depending on minimum wage jobs to make ends meet. They're the folks who clean this building, they're the folks who work at big box stores, it's the folks who work in restaurants, it's the people that you may never see in our busy lives. But I see them every single day in my district. I see them every single day I take my kid to school. I see them every single time I go to the grocery store. It is our responsibility to ask, to demand that Congress act on this vital issue. The last thing I want to say is that there may be some comments that we hear in the media or things that we hear in community about raising the minimum wage, and want to clarify the myths. Number one, Colorado, as I stated before, increased our minimum wage, indexed it to inflation, and it's been part of our ability to recover from the recession. That working families have purchasing power, that they can meet their most immediate needs, and low-income folks are most likely to spend the dollars that they earn in their local communities. So when they get a raise, the grocer down the road gets a raise, the mechanic at the end of the block who's going to fix their car has work. When you are trying to meet your most basic necessities, there isn't an ability to say, let's save. It's, let's survive. And that means those dollars go right back into our local economy, and it supports the local businesses here. At the same time, there have been critiques about raising the federal minimum wage, saying that it would have an undue impact on businesses and that companies instead would just decide to force workers out. I want to say that that opinion is against the large body of evidence. This is probably one of the most studied economic issues ever. And what we know is that businesses will continue to work because there will be demand, because folks can actually pay their bills. They can buy the goods they need or the services they need to survive. 7 Nobel laureates and the vast majority of economists agree that a raise in the minimum wage benefits all of us, every single one of us in this country. With that, colleagues, again, I ask for an aye vote on House Joint Resolution 1012 and would be happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Madam President. If it were so, it might be a good idea, except for the fact that it's none of Congress's business. I just reviewed Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, the authority and the responsibilities of Congress, and minimum wage or anything related to that isn't in there. The closest thing you can get is where it states that Congress is to, let's see, it's to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. Now, that's the Commerce Clause. That's to regulate commerce between the states. That's as close as it gets to the authority of Congress. So just on the face of it, for the title of this concerning a federal minimum wage increase and in connection with therewith urging the United States Congress to act, what the legislature would be doing with this resolution is urging Congress to act unconstitutionally and at the expense of the authority and the responsibility of the state of Colorado, which has already acted, as the sponsor has noted, in addressing the minimum wage at a level higher than the federal level. Now, I said if it were only so, because it isn't so. A couple of words came to my mind as I was reading through this. One was economic insanity, or economic fantasy, might be putting it a little more generously. To submit, page 2, lines 26 through 28, whereas Colorado raised the minimum wage in 2011 and 2012 over the federal minimum, which contributed to a decrease in the unemployment rate from 8.73 to 7.2% during that 2-year period. Now, this is to ignore the fact that we were in a feeble, but nonetheless, an economic recovery over the worst economic recession we've seen in our lifetime. There is some recovery to the unemployment rate, but anybody who considers 7.2% to be a good rate is mistaken. Do we have low enough unemployment today? Is everybody employed with a job? No. The net effect, I heard the arguments, oh, some experts disagree. Well, experts who do not believe that the market is capable of managing the economy, but the federal government has got to get in there and, through a command and control system, drive the economy from the top down. That doesn't work. What that ends up in is economic malaise. We've seen that again. As a matter of fact, we're seeing it now. Why is the economy not responding? Because of all of the controls that are in place, and to drive the federal minimum wage higher is counterproductive to economic recovery, not productive. Now, as I was looking through the resolution, I saw some areas that I think should be addressed a little more accurately, and as a consequence, I have some amendments, and I'm going to start with this one. There is an amendment on the desk, and hopefully we'll get it read eventually here.
There's an amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read L019?
Amendment L019, House Joint Resolution.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll go ahead and read it to you. Whereas I move L019, whereas minimum wage workers tend to be young, and although workers under the age of 25 represent only about 1/5 of hourly paid workers, they make up about half of those paid the federal minimum wage or less. And whereas among employed teenagers paid by the hour, 21% earn the minimum wage or less, compared with about 3% of workers above the age of 25. This is pointing out really the obvious, but I believe if we're going to discuss this, we need to put it on the table that the minimum wage is heavily weighted towards those who are just starting out in work. And to raise the minimum wage is not to give them an increase in labor, in wages, as much as to reduce the economic opportunity, because for all the sponsor wants to make you think that this doesn't affect how many people an employer employs. Look, let's just take a practical application of somebody who runs a pizza parlor, and maybe they've got, a dozen employees that they employ throughout the course of a week. And if you bump up the cost of their employment, I'm assuming they are paying minimum wage, then you are increasing the cost by a significant amount, because labor cost is such a huge part of that shop. And if you bump it up by, let's say, 20%, the employer isn't going to say, oh, good, I can pay 20% more in labor costs. Or, well, I'm just going to sell 20% more pizzas. Well, I suspect that employer is already selling the pizzas as efficiently as they can. Or, oh, this is it, I'm going to raise the rates by 10 or 20%. No, that won't work either, because now you're going to sell fewer pizzas. The obvious result of driving up that wage is to make the employer think, maybe I can work this on 10 people rather than 12. This amendment simply acknowledges that self-evident fact that those entering the job market for the first time are those most likely to be paid at the minimum wage level. And I believe we need to acknowledge that within this resolution. I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Ulibarri. Senator Zunzinger.
Thank you, Madam President. The problem with this amendment is that it's not factually true. Nearly 90% of minimum wage workers are 20 years or older, and the average minimum wage worker is actually 35. So I would encourage a no vote on the amendment, please.
Other discussion on L019. Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Madam President. I also rise in opposition to L019. As was indicated by the previous speaker, the average age of minimum wage workers is 35. Nearly 90% of those earning minimum wage are over the age of 20. I don't believe we should make a statement here in this body that just because you're young, you deserve low wages. For my mom, who was a waitress at the age of 20 when she had my brother, meant she was earning minimum wage, and it meant that she struggled. And I look at the families in my district who have begun families at an early age. That's not the conversation we should be having about whether or not 20 is the right age to start a family. But when that happens, you shouldn't be bound to poverty because of the minimum wage at the federal level or at the state level. I think this says at the most crucial time, as kids are developing, ages 1 through 3, as families are trying to move up and move on, that they deserve less. And I don't think that's fair. I think the second thing is it belies the truth, which is that once upon a time, and I say that as you would start a fairy tale, once upon a time minimum wage work meant that you could move up and move out. It should be a stepping stone, but for so many working people in the state of Colorado, it no longer is a stepping stone. It is a permanent way of life. Please vote no on the amendment.
Senator Marble on the amendment. Senator Marble.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of L019. I am an employer, and we do have many entry-level jobs. When these young people come to apply for a job at our establishment, basically we'll ask them a question. We'll say, why do you want to work here? What is it that you intend to get out of this for what we are going to pay you? And they can say, I want to learn. I want to learn about the liquor industry. I want to know what it takes to run a business. I want you to teach me how to do this so that I can go on in life and maybe open my own. We go, fair enough. If you're willing to work and if you're willing to learn, we're willing to hire. So we're going to pay you a wage to teach you how to do this job. And maybe you will be our competitor when you get out of here, but that's all right. If you hire people and train them right, it's only going to do the industry better if they have good workers, dedicated workers, responsible workers, ones who are diligent, ones who know the reps who come to our store, those who can learn how to communicate well, run the books, or at least have an idea that there are books to run, and be able to keep good inventory count, keep shelves stocked. Look at all the details that go into it, things they never had an idea about before. You are going to teach them. Now, at the wages that we pay now, yeah, we can afford to teach them real well, and we take the time out. And we keep our prices at such a rate that we still have a lot of clientele and repeat clientele coming in. We aren't a big store, so we don't buy as big as lots as our big competitors. So, you know what we do? We work some extra hours at the family and we don't get paid. But we pay our workers. Now, if we have to raise our minimum wage to...
Senator Marble, could you tie your comments to L019?
It is. This is so too...
This is on the statistics, and surely you can tie your comments into the couple statistical suggestions in the amendment.
Well, those paid the federal minimum wage or less, and among employed teenagers, these teenagers are learning, and I support this amendment because we can't afford to pay them more or we have to raise our prices. And yes, it does hurt our business, and our clients will go somewhere else. And when you look at that aspect, this is about these young employed teenagers paid by the hour. The minimum wage, if it rises, our prices will rise. It's a wash. And I support L019 and ask that you take a look at the repercussions if we don't vote for this amendment. It is very important to small business owners.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Madam President. It is a common myth that very low-wage workers who would see a raise in this minimum wage, are mostly teenagers. But the statistical analysis, looking at our entire wage earners in the United States, points to the fact that an average age of affected workers is actually 35. In addition to that, 88% of all affected workers are at least 20 years old, and 35.5% of them are at least 40 years old or older. 56% of them are women, in which 28% have children. 55% of minimum wage workers work full-time, and 44% have at least some college experience. The claims that mostly teenagers would see a raise if the minimum wage were increased are, I think, based erroneously upon the official Bureau of Labor Statistics data on workers who are earning the federal minimum wage or below. I encourage a no vote on the amendment.
The question for the body is the adoption of L019. Are there any no votes? Senators Ulibarri, Aguilar, Zenzinger, Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Nicholson, Kerr, Johnston, Schwartz, Stedman, Newell, Madam President Pro Tem, Senators Hodge, Aguilar, Kafalis, Toktrop, Todd, John, Jones. Senator Todd, I've got you. Please add the president. With 17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, L019 fails. There's another amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read L018?
Amendment L018 to
Senator Lumberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, I move L018. On our last amendment, we seem to have dueling statistics depending on what age you took. This deals with the specific point of, so do you get more jobs when you increase the minimum wage or not? According to the Congressional Budget Office, they estimate that the increase of minimum wage to $10.10 per hour, which is 48 cents below what the amendment identifies as a target date of, or a target amount of 1072. That's on page 2, lines 1 through 3. It simply says the Congressional Budget Office estimates that an increase to $10.10 an hour would cost the economy about 500,000 jobs. So if we're talking about employing people, is increasing the minimum wage going to get you there? And this is why I say I see some economic fantasy in this resolution, because this is simple economics 101. Raise the cost of labor and you will lower the number of laborers who will have the opportunity to find employment. And this is simply quoting from the Congressional Budget Office of their estimates of if the minimum wage were raised to a standard higher, closer to what is at least mentioned in the resolution as apparently a target or a goal. I urge the adoption of L018.
Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Madam President. I respectfully ask for a no vote on L018 and want to speak to the CBO report that is referenced here. Let's talk about simple economics. Unfortunately, the CBO went against the vast majority of research on this issue, against the bulk of studies that have indicated the simple truth, which is, although we hear claims that unemployment will go up when minimum wage increases take effect, that's simply not true, and that's been proven time and time and time and time and time again. An analysis of the 91 places that increased their minimum wage between 1987 and 2012 during a period of high employment found that unemployment decreased 52% of that time. Let's also talk about what the CBO, although their flawed analysis, at least in my opinion, said. Glad the good senator from Berthoud is relying on the federal government's information. But I disagree with their conclusion on the point of losing jobs. But let's talk about the report and what they actually said. The CBO report also said that the minimum wage increase would lift 900,000 people out of poverty here in the state, in this country. 7 Nobel Prize winners, 8 former presidents of the American Economic Association, and over 600 other economists recently summarized the literature on the employment effects of the minimum wage in this way. They said, in recent years, there have been important developments in the academic literature on the effect of the increases in the minimum wage on employment, with the weight of evidence now showing that increases in the minimum wage have had little or no negative effect on the employment of minimum wage workers, even during times of weakness in the labor market. So let's talk facts. What the amendment states is that there would be harm to workers and relies on a CBO report that has been largely debunked by the vast majority of economists. Let's start there. The second piece is that what we know from actual implementation of minimum wage increases is that it has a positive impact for workers. A positive impact for workers. A positive impact for workers because they are lifted out of poverty.
Senator Hill.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, unfortunately, that just puts further evidence to John Kenneth Galbraith's famous quote that the role of economist is to make astrologers look respectable. Unfortunately, when you really look at the economics of this, just like the economics we deal with, whether it's the School Finance Act or the state budget in here, if we were suddenly just to say, all right, automatically we're going to increase floor funding for every single student in the Colorado education system, what will be the result? What will be the result? Where will the money come from? And the truth is, we all know, we've been through the budget, we're going to go through the School Finance Act here shortly. The result is the money has to come from somewhere. In a fixed world, when you only have so much money to pay your employees, the real tragedy of what we're trying to do here is that we're not debating whether or not minimum wage is something you can effectively live on. Absolutely it isn't. But the sad truth is, what we should be more focused on is the dignity of standing on your own 2 legs, of having the chance to work and to earn a living and to get that first rung on the ladder and to be able to keep climbing the ladder. That's the notion of American exceptionalism. That's the idea of the American dream, is once you get your foot on the ladder, you can keep climbing that ladder. And by your hard work, by your tenacity, by your perseverance, you can continue to make yourself, your family, and your community a better place to live. But what we do by increasing the minimum wage is now all of a sudden, with a fixed amount of money we can pay people with, there's somebody else that can't get a job. And we can bring as many business leaders in here, good, honest, upright men and women from across the political spectrum, and many of you as business owners in here know this fact, that you can't just categorically increase everyone's wages without taking from somewhere. And often the case is we have to find some way now to automate. We have to find some way to cheapen labor costs somewhere else, by maybe sending it overseas, or by maybe reducing hours somewhere else, or cutting multiple people to part-time now so we don't have to pay benefits for them. And so, as well-intentioned as this may be, the economics speak to the fact that we're undermining the ability for as many people as possible to get a job, to hold down a job, and to get their first foot on that first rung of the ladder. Absolutely, we're all in agreement that living wage is not minimum wage. But where we disagree, and this is where the economics of those who are pushing this are severely flawed, is that to increase it, it's got to come from somewhere else. If you squeeze one part of a balloon, it's got to go somewhere else. We can't increase the overall size of the pie by artificially increasing what we have to pay people. We can only increase the size of the pie by getting as many people employed and getting on that first rung of the ladder as possible, and then using their natural energy, their creativity, their entrepreneurship, their innovation to go and create that next realm of jobs, that next area of opportunity. And we see this time and time and time again. And friends, the evidence plays itself out. In the last 10 years, we've increased minimum wage 3 times. What's happened to poverty over that same amount of time? The sad truth is it's actually increased. And no amount of us tinkering on this side is actually going to help those who most need the chance to stand on their own 2 legs. I encourage you not just to support this amendment, but to support the overall economics, that the only way to expand and advance and increase opportunity for every single person, not just in this room but in the state of Colorado, is to give them the chance to stand on their own 2 feet, to get that first rung on the ladder, to get that chance to earn a wage, and then to work themselves up, to work their way up. And this is not the way to do it. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Now we're penalizing those least able to stand on their own 2 feet. We're penalizing those least able to produce and to add value, and we're pushing them out of economic viability and back on to dependency with the state. And so, with due respect to those who want to quote economists up here, the fact is this is not a one-size-fits-all. Economists are not in agreement on this. And if you look at the data, if you're serious about reducing poverty, then we've got to look at what we've done and what we've accomplished in reducing poverty. And the sad fact is, no amount of our efforts. We've increased the minimum wage 11 times since 1979, 11 times since 1979, and friends, we've failed to make a significant progress on what it actually takes to reduce poverty here, not just in Colorado, but the United States. I encourage your support of the economics of what it actually takes to reduce poverty, of what it actually takes to earn a living wage, and artificially doing this is not the method. So please support this amendment and consider seriously your support of this resolution as a whole.
The question is the adoption of Amendment L018. Are there any no votes? Senators Ulibarri, Zenzinger, Mr. Majority Leader, Senators Aguilar, Jones, Kerr, Nicholson, Madam President Pro Tem, Senators Stedman, Newell, Johnston, Todd, Schwartz, Kafalas, Toctrup. No votes on L018. Senators Hodge, John. Please add the president. With 17 ayes, 18 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, L018 fails. There's apparently another amendment on the desk. Mr. Majors, would you please read L020?
Amendment L020.
Senator Lumber.
Thank you, Madam President. I will be quick, but members, I saved the best till last. We obviously disagreed on some of the statistics, but maybe we can agree on this, and I do mean this. Maybe we can agree on this, if in fact what this resolution is intended to do is to help encourage good jobs for Coloradoans. This states, whereas the Colorado General Assembly should support policies that will create jobs in industries that pay high wages, such as mining, logging, petroleum and natural gas, wholesale trade, information technology, transportation, manufacturing, professional and scientific and technical services. And it goes on for a few more things, but that's the point. Are we trying to encourage good economic vitality that creates good, high-paying jobs? Then let's put it in this resolution. I urge an aye vote.
Further discussion on L020, Senator Ulibarri.
Thank you, Madam President. I urge a no vote on the amendment that was just offered. I want to clarify. I know I can't do a title ruling on a House joint resolution. However, I don't feel that the clauses speak to the subject of this resolution. The subject of this resolution is concerning a federal minimum wage increase, and what the amendment says. The amendment asks us to lower income and sales taxes, asks us to do more oil and gas development, wants us to continue reinforcing taxpayer Bill of Rights, all issues that deserve their own debate, but not within this resolution.
Senator Ulibarri, the presiding officer, rules that L020 does not fit under the title. Regardless of the chamber, it's still subject to single subject. Further discussion on House Joint Resolution 1012. Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, in the former Soviet Union, there was a proverb: they can pretend to pay us, and then we can pretend to work. When the government dictates your salaries outside of market forces, this is just going to cause an economic distortion, and it already has. We are at absolutely historically low rates of labor participation in the United States. 63% of our workforce is actually working. That's a disgrace for American workers. And the whole definition of a federally mandated minimum wage is based upon the idea that you're going to be able to work at that minimum wage, when our other colleagues have said the fact of this is that businesses are not able to sustain that, and workers are squeezed out of that market. The real minimum wage in the United States is not $10.72, it's not $7.25. The real minimum wage in the United States is zero. That is what happens when a worker loses his or her job. So when our colleagues say, you know, well, why don't you live for a month or a week at minimum wage? I put out a challenge. Why don't we sympathize with those workers that are losing their job because of higher and higher minimum wage laws that are dictated by the government? What about the 38%, 37% of workers who are qualified to work, have lost their jobs in this economy, that have to pay more and more for housing, for energy, for health care, because of the misguided policies that work in concert with minimum wage laws to squeeze more and more people out of the workforce? Empathize with them, those that are losing their jobs because they're getting squeezed out of the market. Please vote no on this resolution.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be brief because we've covered, I think, all the statistics and the inferences of the statistics, but I did want to share something. Frankly, it's from a constituent of the President's. They've had a family-owned business for just under 20 years in Aurora. And a few years ago, when the minimum wage requirement for service employees, wait staff, et cetera, hit, they literally lost 2 complete employees, to include the owner, from taking a salary, no longer employed by the business that he started almost 20 years ago, so that the mandatory minimum wage would apply to servers who were already in the $20+ an hour range with tips. With tips, we're already making significantly higher than even the new minimum wage. And it's real easy to send letters to Congress, if you can get the votes, and then ask them to tell other people how to spend their money. It's OPM, other people's money. That's the easiest money to deal with. That's part of the $24 billion that we deal with. I saw the bus last night. I took a picture of the bus. Nobody who works full-time should have to raise a family in poverty. I know what that feels like. I've eaten out of cans that said beans or corn. I've taken the coupons to get a lunch at school. I get it. I've lived there. But how does zero income help somebody? How does zero income help somebody? I really appreciated the sponsor's reference to beans and tapatio, 2 of my favorite things. Frankly, I would choose them over most other things. But how much of that could you buy, because they are pretty affordable, when you make nothing? When you make nothing. The real issue is jobs. The real issue is we need to be empowering people in the job market. We should stop the political pandering of proposals like this so that we can do this in a timely fashion. When the bus was just hired to drive by the Capitol today, if you haven't seen it, come take a look at the pictures I took last night, to be a part of the marketing machine for the next round of campaign work. We understand take a poll, run a bus, prepare to pander, run a proposal. That's what's happening here today. The campaign season has begun. Vote no.
The question for the body is the adoption of House Joint Resolution 1012. Are there any no votes? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Shuffle, Marble, Baumgartner, Lambert, Herpin, Lundberg, Brophy, Roberts, Grantham, Balmer, Rivera, Hill, Renfro.
Roll call. I think I can do that in the no vote.
A roll call vote has been requested. Mr. Majors, please poll the senators.
Aguilar.
The request has been withdrawn. The question is, are there any no votes on House Joint Resolution 1012? Mr. Minority Leader, Senators Shuffle, Baumgartner, Harvey, Marble, Grantham, King, Lambert, Brophy, Herpin, Rivera, Crowder, Roberts, Lundberg, Balmer, Hill, Renfro. That's that funny new math. With 18 ayes, 17 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, House Joint Resolution 1012 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Senator Nicholson. Mr. Majority Leader. Senators Jones, Todd, Kerr, Schwartz. Please add the President. Senator Newell. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. I move we lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow, April 24th.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. We'll lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow. Committee reports.
April 22nd, 2014, Madam President, the Committee on Transportation has had a consideration as that hearing on the following appointments, recommends the appointments be confirmed. Member of the Waste Tire Advisory Committee for a term expiring September 9, 2014, Brian S. Cunningham of Pueblo, Colorado, serves as a tire retailer, and upon the resignation of Michael Scott Skork of Golden, Colorado, appointed. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Transportation, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee, recommends the following Senate Bill 200 be amended as follows and also amended for the Committee of Appropriations, a favorable recommendation. April 22nd, 2014, Committee on Transportation, after consideration of the Mayor's Committee, recommends the following House Bill 1029 be amended as follows and also amended before the Committee on Finance, a favorable recommendation.
Announcements. Senator Newell.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, today, those of you who remembered to wear your jeans and donate, I just wanted to give you actually two sentences about why and how important this is. Denim Day is a worldwide movement that started in 1997 in Rome, Italy. An 18-year-old girl was raped by her 45-year-old driving instructor, who was later convicted and sentenced to jail. The perpetrator appealed the sentence, and his case went to the Italian Supreme Court, where the case was overturned. The head judge released a statement arguing that because the victim wore tight jeans, he assumed that she must have helped her perpetrator remove her jeans and therefore consented. Enraged by the verdict, the women in the Italian parliament launched into immediate action and protested by wearing jeans on the steps of the Italian parliament building. This was the beginning of what has become a worldwide event and movement to wear jeans as a visible means of protest against misconceptions that surround sexual assault. We are asking you to wear your jeans on April 23rd in support of this movement and to lead our communities in support of freedom from sexual violence. So thank you to those of you who have donated it completely voluntary. For those of you who have worn your jeans, remember all day for the support of survivors of sexual violence. Thank you.
Senator Crowder.
I would make a request and support that, but I would make the request that we could wear our denim the rest of the session to come out in support of this. Thank you.
Senator Crowder means it every day. Other announcements? Senator Schwartz? Announcements?
And thank you, Mr. President, and looking for Senator Toptalk as well. Senator Toptalk, we're going to talk about Sportsman's Day today at the Capitol, and we wanted to just let everyone know on the West Foyer downstairs is an exhibit of our sportsmen. Come by for some hot dogs at lunch and talk with your local sportsmen and welcome them to the Capitol. But more importantly, we had a great presentation this morning at Joint Ag that talks about how we can raise the next generation of sportsmen and sportswomen in the state of Colorado. So important work, and let's welcome them to the Capitol today. Hot dogs downstairs for lunch.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, let me just a couple of quick announcements and again review where we are today. I've had several questions. JBC is meeting today at 2 o'clock. The Education Committee is not hearing Senate Bill 202 today, is not hearing Senate Bill 202. And tomorrow, the Health and Human Services Committee will not hear House Bill 1297. We have a lot of bills in committee, so.
Finance will hear 1292 tomorrow. It wasn't on the calendar.
Excuse me, I was just told that the Finance Committee will hear House Bill 1292 tomorrow. So we are going to, again, not adjourn. We are going to recess so we can continue to have bills read over the calendar. Obviously, you do not need to be here. Let me also remind everyone that we are going to have a lot of bills. All you have to do is look at the calendar and know what's coming over. So Friday afternoon, we will be here and taking up as many of the bills on second reading that we can deal with. I'm getting a note that transportation will hear Senate Bill 197 for action only when, Senator? Tomorrow. 197 for action only tomorrow. So,
And goodies at the back from Representative DeGette.
and I am told that there are goodies in the back courtesy of Congressman DeGette. So for those of you that want to indulge in goodies, you can do that.
You know, before we make this motion, where is the Congresswoman? Oh, okay, well, I just wanted to mention for everybody, bringing goodwill, Congresswoman Diana DeGette is here with her goodies for everyone and is hoping to catch us and say hi to everybody in the Senate at some point later today. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss her. Mr. Majority Leader, go ahead.
Thank you. With that, are we ready to recess?
Anyone have any other announcements? Last call.
Last call.
We're ready.
Okay, with that, thank you, Madam President. I move that the Senate recess until 1 p.m. this afternoon, April 23rd.
For the motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. The Senate will stand in recess till 1 p.m. today.